7. 3body, King Wen of Zhou, and the Long Night. Wang dialed Ding Yi's number. Only when Ding picked up did he realize that it was already 1 in the morning.
This is Wang Miao. I'm sorry to be calling so late.
No problem. I can't sleep anyway.
I have seen something, and I'd like your help. Do you know if there are any facilities in China that are observing the cosmic microwave background?
Wang had the urge to talk to someone about what was going on, but he thought it best to not let too many people know about the countdown that only he could see. The cosmic microwave background? What made you interested in that? I guess you really have run into some problems. Have you been to see Young Dong's mother yet?
I'm sorry, I forgot.
No worries. Right now, many scientists have seen something, like you. Everyone's distracted. But I think it's still best if you go visit her. She's getting on in years, and she won't hire a caretaker. If there's some task around the home that she needs help with, please help her. Oh, right, the cosmic microwave background. You can ask Young's mother. Before she retired, she was an astrophysicist. She's very familiar with such facilities in China.
Good. I'll go after work today.
Then I'll thank you in advance. I really can't face anything that reminds me of Young Dong again. After hanging up, Wang sat in front of his computer and printed out the simple Morse code chart. By now he was calm enough to turn his thoughts away from the countdown. He pondered the frontiers of science, Shen Yufei, and the computer game she had been playing. The only thing he knew for certain about Shen was that she wasn't the type to enjoy computer games. She spoke like a telegraph and gave him the impression that she was always extremely cold. It wasn't the kind of coldness that some people put on like a mask. Hers suffused her all the way through. Wang subconsciously thought of her as the long-obsolete DOS operating system, a blank black screen, a bare C:\\prompt, a blinking cursor. Whatever you entered, it echoed back. Not one extra letter and not a single change. But now he knew that behind the C:\\, was a bottomless abyss.
She's actually interested in a game? A game that requires a V-suit? She has no kids, which means she bought the V-suit for herself. The very idea is preposterous.
Wang entered the address for the game into the browser. It had been easy to memorize, www.3body3.net. The site indicated that the game only supported access via V-suit. Wang remembered that the employee lounge at the Nanotechnology Research Center had a V-suit. He left the now-empty main lab and went to the security office to get the key. In the lounge, he passed the pool tables and the exercise machines and found the V-suit next to a computer. He struggled into the haptic feedback suit, put on the panoramic viewing helmet, and turned on the computer. After entering the game, Wang found himself in the middle of a desolate plain at dawn. The plain was dun-colored, blurry, its details hard to make out. In the distance, there was a sliver of white light on the horizon. Twinkling stars covered the rest of the sky. There was a loud explosion, and 2 red-glowing mountains crashed against the earth in the distance. The whole plain was bathed in red light. When the dust finally cleared from the sky, Wang saw 2 giant words erected between the sky and the earth: 3body. Next came a registration screen. Wang created the ID Hiren and logged in. The plane remained desolate, but now the compressors in the V-suit whirred to life, and Wang could feel gusts of cold air against his body. Before him appeared 2 walking figures, forming dark silhouettes against the dawn light. Wang ran after them. He saw that both figures were male. They were dressed in long robes full of holes, covered by dirty animal hides. Each carried a short, wide bronze sword. One of them carried a narrow wooden trunk that was as long as half his height. He turned around to look at Wang. The man's face was as dirty and wrinkled as the hide he wore, but his eyes were sharp and lively, the pupils glinting in the early morning glow.
"It's cold,"
he said.
"Yes, very cold."
"This is the warring states period,"
the man with the trunk on his back said.
"I am King Wen of Zhou."
"I don't think King Wen belongs to the warring states period,"
Wang said.
"He's survived until now,"
the other man said.
"King Zhou of Shang is alive too. I am a follower of King Wen. Indeed, that's my login ID, follower of King Wen of Zhou. He's a genius, you know."
"My login ID is Hiron. What are you carrying on your back?"
King Wen put down the rectangular trunk and stood it up vertically. He opened one of the sides like a door and revealed 5 compartments within. By the faint light, Wang could see that every layer held a small mound of sand. Every compartment seemed to have sand falling into it from the compartment above, through a small hole.
"A type of sand glass. Every 8 hours, all the sand flows to the bottom. Flip it 3 times and you can measure a day. But often I forget to flip it, and I need follower here to remind me."
"You seem to be on a very long journey. Is it necessary to carry such a bulky clock?"
"How else would we measure time?"
"A portable sundial would be much more convenient, or else you could just look at the sun and know the approximate time."
King Wen and follower stared at each other, and then turned as one to gaze at Wang, as though he was an idiot.
"The sun? How can the sun tell us the time? We're in the midst of a chaotic era."
Wang was about to ask for the meaning of the strange term when follower cried out piteously,
"It's so cold! I'm gonna die of the cold!"
Wang felt very cold as well, but in most games, taking off his V-suit would immediately cause his ID to be deleted by the system. He couldn't do that. He said,
"When the sun comes out, it'll be warmer."
"Are you pretending to be some kind of oracle? Even King Wen cannot predict the future."
Follower shook his head contemptuously.
"What does what I said have to do with predicting the future? Everyone can see that the sun will rise in about another hour or 2.
Wang pointed to the sliver of light above the horizon.
"This is a chaotic era."
"What is a chaotic era?"
"Other than stable eras, all times are chaotic eras."
King Wen answered the way he would have spoken to an ignorant child. Indeed, the light over the horizon dimmed and soon disappeared. Night covered everything. The stars overhead shone even more brightly.
"So that was dusk instead of dawn?"
Wang asked.
"It is morning, but the sun doesn't always rise in the morning. That's what a chaotic era is like."
Wang found the cold hard to take.
"It looks like the sun won't rise for a long time."
He shivered and pointed to the blurry horizon.
"What makes you think that? There's no way to be certain. I told you this is a chaotic era."
Follower turned to King Wen.
"May I have some dried fish?" "Absolutely not."
King Wen's tone brooked no disagreement.
"I barely have enough for myself. We must guarantee that I make it to Zhaoge, not you."
As they spoke, Wang noticed the sky brightening over another part of the horizon. He couldn't be sure of the compass directions, but he was sure the direction this time was different from last time. The sky grew brighter, and soon the sun of this world rose. It was small and bluish in color, like a very bright moon. Wang still felt a bit of warmth, and could now see the landscape around him more clearly. But the day didn't last long. The sun traversed a shallow arc over the horizon and soon set. Night and the bone-chilling cold once more settled over everything. The 3 travelers stopped in front of a dead tree. King Wen and follower took out their bronze swords to chop the tree into firewood, and Wang gathered the firewood into a pile. Follower took out a piece of flint and struck it against a blade until the sparks caught. The fire soon warmed the front of Wong's V-suit, but his back remained cold.
"We should burn some of the dehydrated bodies," Follower said. "Then we'll have a roaring fire." "Put that thought out of your mind. Only the tyrant King Zhou would engage in that kind of behavior." "We've seen so many dehydrated bodies scattered along the road here. They've been torn and won't be revivable even when rehydrated. If your theory really works, what does it matter if we burn a few of them? We can even eat some. How can a few lives compare to the importance of your theory?" "Stop with that nonsense. We're scholars."
After the fire burnt out, the three continued their journey. Since they were not speaking to each other much, the system sped up the passage of in-game time. King Wen flipped the sandglass on his back 6 times rapidly, indicating the lapse of 2 days. The sun never rose once, not even a hint of dawn over the horizon.
"It seems that the sun will never rise again,"
Wong said. He brought up the game menu to take a look at his health bar. Due to the extreme cold, it was steadily decreasing.
"Again, you're pretending you're some kind of oracle,"
Follower said. But this time he and Wong finished the thought together.
"This is a chaotic era."
Soon after this, however, dawn did appear over the horizon. The sky brightened rapidly, and the sun rose. Wong noticed that this time the sun was gigantic. After just half of it rose, it took up at least 1/5 of the visible horizon. Waves of heat bathed them, and Wong felt refreshed. But when he glanced over at King Wen and Follower, he saw that both had terror on their faces, as though they had seen a demon.
"Quick, find shade!"
Follower shouted. Wong ran after them. They ducked behind a large rock. The shadow cast by the rock gradually grew shorter and shorter. The earth around them glowed as though on fire. The permafrost beneath them soon melted, the steel-like hard surface turning into a sea of mud, roiled by waves of heat. Wong sweated profusely. When the sun was directly overhead, the three covered their heads with the animal hides, but the bright light still shot through the holes and gaps like arrows. The three shifted around the rock until they were able to hide inside the new shadow that had just appeared on the other side. After the sun set, the air remained hot and damp. The 3 sweat-drenched travelers sat on the rock. Follower spoke with dismay.
"Traveling during a chaotic era is like walking through hell. I can't stand it anymore. Also, I haven't had anything to eat because you won't give me any dried fish, and you won't let me eat the dehydrated bodies. What?"
"The only choice is to dehydrate you," King Wen said, fanning himself with a piece of hide.
"You won't abandon me afterwards, will you?"
"Of course not. I promise to bring you to Zhao Ge." Follower stripped off his sweat-soaked robe and lay down nude on the muddy earth. In the last glow from the sun, already below the horizon, Wong saw water oozing out of Follower's body. He knew that it was no longer sweat. All the water in his body was being discharged and squeezed out. The water coalesced into a few small rivulets in the mud. His body turned soft and lost its shape like a melting candle. 10 minutes later, all the water had been eliminated from his body. Follower was now a man-shaped piece of leather stretched out on the ground. His facial features had flattened and become indistinct.
"Is he dead?"
Wong asked. He remembered seeing such man-shaped pieces of hide scattered along the road. Some were torn and incomplete. He supposed they were the dehydrated bodies Follower spoke of earlier as potential kindling. "No," King Wen answered. He picked up Follower's skin, brushed the mud and dust off, laid him out on the rock, and rolled him up like a balloon with its air let out. "He'll recover soon enough. When we soak him in water, it's just like soaking dried mushrooms."
"Even his bones have turned soft?"
"Yes, his skeleton is turned into dried fibers. This makes him easy to carry.
In this world, can everyone be dehydrated and rehydrated?
Of course. You can too. Otherwise we could not survive the chaotic eras.
King Wen handed the rolled-up follower to Wang.
Carry him. If you abandon him on the road, he'll be burned or eaten.
Wang accepted the skin, a light roll. He held it under his arm, and it didn't feel too strange. With Wang carrying the dehydrated follower and King Wen carrying the sand glass, the two continued their arduous journey. Like the previous few days, the progress of the sun in this world followed no pattern. After a long, frigid night, lasting several days' worth of time, a brief but scorching day might follow, and vice versa. The two relied on each other for survival. They lit fires to hold off the cold, and ducked into lakes to avoid the heat. At least the game sped up the progress of time. A month in game time might pass in half an hour. This made the journey through the chaotic era at least tolerable for Wang. One day, after a long night that lasted almost a week, as measured by the sand glass, King Wen suddenly shouted joyously as he pointed to the night sky.
Flying stars! 2 flying stars!
Actually, Wang had already noticed the strange celestial bodies. They were bigger than stars and showed up as disks about the size of ping-pong balls. They moved through the sky at a pace quick enough for the naked eye to detect the motion, but it was the first time 2 of them had appeared together. King Wen explained.
When 2 flying stars appear, it means a stable era is about to begin.
We've seen flying stars before.
Yes, but only 1 at a time.
Is 2 the most we'll see at once?
No. Sometimes 3 will appear, but no more than that.
If 3 flying stars appear, does that herald an even better era?
King Wen gave Wang a frightened look.
What are you talking about? 3 flying stars. Pray that such a thing never happens.
King Wen turned out to be right. The yearned-for stable era soon began. Sunrise and sunset began to follow a pattern. A day-night cycle began to stabilize around 18 hours. The orderly alternation of day and night made the weather warm and mild.
How long does a stable era last?
Wang asked.
As short as a day, or as long as a century. No one can predict how long one will last.
King Wen sat on the sand glass, lifting his head to gaze at the noonday sun.
According to historical records, the Western Zhou dynasty experienced a stable era lasting 2 centuries. How lucky to be born during such a time.
Then how long does a chaotic era last?
I already told you. Other than stable eras, all other times belong to chaotic eras. Each of them takes up the time not occupied by the other.
So this is a world in which there are no patterns.
Yes. Civilization can only develop in the mild climate of stable eras. Most of the time, humankind must collectively dehydrate and be stored. When a long, stable era arrives, they collectively revive through rehydration. Then they proceed to build and produce.
How can you predict the arrival and duration of each stable era?
Such a thing has never been done. When a stable era arrives, the king makes a decision based on intuition as to whether to engage in mass rehydration. Often the people are revived, crops are planted, cities begin construction, life has just started, and then the stable era ends. Extreme cold and heat then destroy everything.
King Wen now pointed at Wang, his eyes sparkling.
Now you know the goal of this game. To use our intellect and understanding to analyze all phenomena until we can know the pattern of the sun's movement. The survival of civilization depends on it.
Based on my observations, there is no pattern to the sun's movement at all.
That's because you do not understand the fundamental nature of the world.
And you do?
Yes. This is why I'm going to Zhao Ge. I will present King Zhou with an accurate calendar.
But I've seen no evidence on this trip that you can do such a thing.
Predicting the sun's motion is only possible in Zhao Ge, for that is where yin and yang meet. Only the lots cast there are accurate."
The two continued on through the harsh conditions of another chaotic era, interrupted briefly by a short stable era, until they finally arrived in Zhao Ge. Wang heard an unceasing roar that sounded like thunder. The sound was generated by the numerous giant pendulums that could be seen all over Zhao Ge, each tens of meters in height. The weight of each pendulum was a giant rock, suspended from a thick rope tied to a bridge that stretched between the tops of two slender stone towers. All the pendulums were swinging as groups of soldiers in armor kept them in motion. Chanting incomprehensibly, they rhythmically pulled ropes attached to the giant stone weights, adding to the pendulum's arcs as they slowed. Wang noticed that all the pendulums swung in step. From far away, the sight was awe-inducing. It was as though numerous giant clocks had been erected over the earth, or colossal abstract symbols had fallen from the sky. The giant pendulums surrounded an even more enormous pyramid, standing like a tall mountain in the dark night. This was King Zhou's palace. Wang followed King Wen into a low door at the base of the pyramid, before which a few soldiers patrolled in the darkness, noiseless as ghosts. The door led to a long, narrow, dark tunnel going deep into the pyramid, with a few torches along the way. As they walked, King Wen spoke to Wang.
"During a chaotic era, the entire country is dehydrated, but King Zhou remains awake, a companion to the lifeless land. In order to survive during a chaotic era, one must live in thick-walled buildings like this one, as though one were living underground. It's the only way to avoid the extreme heat and cold."
After a long time in the tunnel, they finally arrived at the Great Hall at the center of the pyramid. Actually, the hall was not that big and reminded Wang of a cave. The man sitting on a dais and draped with a party-colored hide was undoubtedly King Zhou. But what drew Wang's attention was a man dressed all in black. The black robe blended with the thick shadows in the Great Hall, and the pale white face seemed to float in air.
"This is Fu Si."
King Zhou introduced the man in black to Wang and King Wen. He spoke as though Wang and King Wen had always been there, while the man in black was the newcomer.
"He thinks that the sun is a temperamental god. When the god is awake, his moods are unpredictable, and thus we have a chaotic era. But when he's asleep, his breathing evens out, and thus we have a stable era. Fu Si suggested that I build those pendulums you see out there, and keep them in constant motion. He claims that the pendulums can have a hypnotic effect on the sun god, and cause him to sink into a long slumber. But we can all see that so far, the sun god remains awake, though from time to time he seems to nap briefly."
King Zhou waved his hands, and servants brought over a clay pot and set it down on the small stone table before Fu Si. Later, Wang found out that it was a pot of seasoned broth. Fu Si sighed, lifted the pot, and drank in great gulps, the sound of his swallows echoing like the beating of a giant heart in the darkness. After he was halfway done with the contents, he poured the rest over his body. Then he threw down the pot and walked toward a large bronze cauldron suspended over a fire in the corner of the great hall. He climbed onto the edge of the cauldron and jumped in, stirring up a cloud of vapor.
"Ji Chang, sit down,"
King Zhou said.
"We'll eat in just a little while."
He pointed to the cauldron.
"Foolish witchcraft,"
King Wen said, glancing contemptuously at the cauldron.
"What have you learned about the sun?"
King Zhou asked. Firelight flickered in his eyes.
"The sun is not a god. The sun is yang, and the night is yin. The world proceeds on the balance between yin and yang. Though we cannot control the process, we can predict it."
King Wen took out his bronze sword and drew a yin-yang symbol on the floor, dimly lit by the fire. Then he carved the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching around the symbol, the whole composition resembling a calendar wheel.
My king, this is the code of the universe. With it I can present your dynasty with an accurate calendar.
Ji Chang, I need to know when the next long, stable era will come.
I will forecast it for you right now,
King Wen said. He sat down in the middle of the yin-yang symbol, his legs curled under him. He raised his head to look up at the ceiling of the great hall, his gaze seeming to penetrate the thick stones of the pyramid until it reached the stars. The fingers of his two hands began a series of rapid, complex movements, like components of a calculating machine. In the silence, only the soup in the cauldron in the corner made any noise, boiling and bubbling as though the shaman being cooked within was dream-talking in his sleep. King Wen stood up in the middle of the yin-yang symbol. With his face still lifted to the ceiling, he said,
"Next will be a chaotic era lasting 41 days. Then comes a 5-day stable era. Thereafter there will be a 23-day chaotic era, followed by an 18-day stable era. Then we'll have an 8-day chaotic era. But when this chaotic era is over, my king, the long, stable era you've been waiting for will begin. That stable era will last 3 years and 9 months. The climate will be so mild that it'll be a golden age."
We have to verify your initial predictions first,
King Zhou said, his face expressionless. Wang heard a loud rumbling from above. A stone slab in the ceiling of the great hall slid open, revealing a square opening. Wang shifted his position and saw that the opening led to another tunnel going up through the center of the pyramid. At the end of the tunnel, he could see a few twinkling stars. Game time sped up. Every few seconds, in real time, 2 soldiers flipped over the sand glass brought by King Wen, indicating the passing of 8 hours in game time. The opening through the ceiling flickered with random lights, and once in a while a ray of sunlight from the chaotic era shot into the great hall. Sometimes the light was weak, like moonlight. Sometimes the light was very strong, and the incandescent white square cast against the ground glowed so brightly that the torches in the great hall paled in comparison. Wang continued to count the flipping of the sand glass. By the time it had been flipped 120 times or so, the appearance of the sunlight through the square opening became regular. The first of the predicted stable eras had arrived. After 15 more flips of the sand glass, the flickering light through the opening became patternless again, the start of another chaotic era. Another stable era followed, and another chaotic era. The starting times and durations of the various eras were not exactly as King Wen had predicted, but they were close. After the conclusion of yet another 8-day chaotic era, the long stable era he predicted began. Wang kept counting the flips of the sand glass. 20 days passed, and the sunlight falling into the great hall maintained the precise rhythm. Game time slowed down to normal. King Zhou nodded at King Wen.
I shall erect a monument for you, one even greater than this palace.
King Wen bowed deeply.
My king, awaken your dynasty and let it prosper.
King Zhou stood up on the dais and opened his arms, as though he wanted to embrace the whole world. In a strange, otherworldly voice, he began to chant,
Rehydrate.
As soon as the order was given, everyone in the great hall rushed to the door. Wang followed King Wen closely, and they exited the pyramid through the long tunnel they'd entered by. When they emerged, Wang saw the noonday sun bathing the land in warmth. In a passing breeze, he seemed to smell the fragrances of spring. Together, King Wen and Wang walked to a nearby lake. The ice over the lake had melted, and sunlight danced between the gentle waves. A column of soldiers shouted, "Rehydrate! Rehydrate!" as they ran toward a large stone building shaped like a granary next to the lake. On the road to Zhaoge, Wang had seen many buildings like it, and King Wen had told him that these buildings were called dehydatories, warehouses where the dehydrated bodies could be stored. The soldiers opened the heavy stone doors of the dehydatory and carried out rolls of dusty skins. Each soldier walked to the lakeshore and tossed them into the water. As soon as the skins touched the water, they began to unfurl and stretch out. Soon, the lake was covered by a layer of man-shaped floating skins, each rapidly absorbing the water and expanding. Gradually, all the man-shaped skin cutouts became fleshy bodies that gradually began to display signs of life. One by one, they struggled up out of the waist-deep water and stood up. Looking around at the sunny world with wide-open eyes, they appeared to have just awoken from a dream.
"Rehydrate!"
one man cried out.
"Rehydrate! Rehydrate!"
Other voices joyously echoed his. Everyone climbed out of the lake and ran naked toward the dehydatory. They carried out more skins and tossed them into the water, and even more of the revived climbed out of the lake. The same scene repeated itself around every lake and pool. The entire world was coming back to life.
"Oh, heavens! My finger!"
Wang saw a man who had just been revived standing in the middle of the lake, holding up one hand and crying. The hand was missing its middle finger, and blood flowed from the wound into the water. Others, who had also just been revived, passed by him as they happily waded ashore, ignoring him.
"Count yourself lucky,"
one of them said to the man.
"Some lost a whole arm or leg. Others had their heads chewed through by rats. If we hadn't been rehydrated in time, maybe all of us would have been eaten by the chaotic era rats."
"How long have we been dehydrated?" one of the revived asked.
"You can tell by looking at the thickness of the dust covering the palace. I just heard that the king is no longer the king from before, but I don't know if he's the old king's son or grandson."
It took 8 days to complete the work of rehydration. All of the stored dehydrated bodies had been revived, and the world was given a new life. During these 8 days, everyone enjoyed regular cycles of sunset and sunrise, each cycle precisely 20 hours long. Enjoying the spring-like climate, everyone gave heartfelt praise to the sun and the gods who guided the world. On the night of the 8th day, the bonfires scattered over the ground seemed even more numerous and denser than the stars in the sky. The ruins of cities and towns abandoned during the chaotic eras once again filled with noise and light. Like every mass rehydration in the past, the people were going to celebrate all night to welcome their new life after the next sunrise. But the sun did not rise again. Every kind of timepiece indicated that the time for sunrise had passed, but the horizon remained dark in every direction. 10 hours later, there was still no sign of the sun, not even the slightest hint of dawn. The endless night lasted through a whole day, then 2 days. Coldness now pressed toward the earth like a giant hand. Inside the pyramid, King Wen knelt before King Zhou, pleading.
"My king, please continue to have faith in me. This is but temporary. I have seen the yang of the universe gathering, and the sun will rise soon. The stable era and spring will continue."
"Let's begin to heat the cauldron," King Zhou said, and sighed.
"Oh, king!"
A minister stumbled through the cave-like entrance into the great hall.
There are 3 flying stars in the sky!"
Those in the great hall were stunned. The air seemed frozen. Only King Zhou remained impassive. He turned to Wang, to whom he had never deigned to speak before.
"You still don't understand what the appearance of 3 flying stars means, do you?"
"Ji Chang," Why don't you tell him?
It indicates the arrival of a long period of extreme cold. Cold enough to turn stone into dust.
King Wen sighed.
Dehydrate.
King Zhou again chanted in that strange, otherworldly voice. Outside, people had already begun the process. They turned themselves back into dehydrated bodies to survive the long night that was coming. The lucky ones had time to be stacked in the dehydratories, but many were abandoned in the empty fields. King Wen stood up slowly and walked toward the cauldron over the roaring fire in the corner of the great hall. He climbed up the side and paused for a few seconds before jumping in. Perhaps he had seen the thoroughly cooked face of Fu Si laughing at him from the soup.
Keep the fire low,
King Zhou ordered, his voice weak. Then he turned to the others.
You may exit if you wish. The game is no longer fun after it gets to this point.
A red exit sign showed up above the Great Hall's cave-like entrance. Players in the Great Hall streamed toward it, and Wang followed the crowd. Through the long tunnel, they finally emerged outside the pyramid. Heavy snow falling through the night air greeted them. The bone-chilling cold caused Wang to shiver, and a display in a corner of the sky indicated that game time had sped up again. The snow continued without pause for 10 days. By now the snowflakes were large and heavy, like pieces of solidified darkness. Someone whispered next to Wang,
The snow is now composed of frozen carbon dioxide, dry ice.
Wang turned around and saw that the speaker was Follower. After another 10 days, the snowflakes turned thin and translucent. By the weak light from a few torches within the entrance to the long tunnel, the snowflakes gave off a faint blue glow, like pieces of dancing mica.
Those snowflakes are now composed of solidified oxygen and nitrogen. The atmosphere is disappearing through deposition, which means it's near absolute zero above.
Snow gradually buried the pyramid. The lowest layers were composed of water snow, then dry ice, and finally on top, snow made of oxygen and nitrogen. The night sky became especially clear, and the stars glowed like a field of silver bonfires. A line of text appeared against the starry background. The long night lasted 48 years. Civilization number 137 was destroyed by the extreme cold. This civilization had advanced to the Warring States period before succumbing. The seed of civilization remains. It will germinate and again progress through the unpredictable world of 3body. We invite you to log on in the future. Before exiting the game, Wang noticed the 3 flying stars in the sky. Revolving closely around each other, they seemed to perform a strange dance against the abyss of space. 8. Ye Winxie. Wang took off the V-suit and panoramic viewing helmet. His shirt was soaked with sweat, as if he had just awoken from a nightmare. He left the research center, got into his car, and drove to the address given to him by Ding Yi, the house of Yang Dong's mother. Chaotic era, chaotic era, chaotic era. The thought turned and turned in Wang's head.
Why would the path of the sun through the world of 3body be devoid of regularity and pattern? Whether a planet's orbit is more circular or more elliptical, its motion around its sun must be periodic. Total irregularity in planetary motion is impossible.
Wang grew angry with himself. He shook his head, trying to chase away these thoughts.
It's only a game. But I lost.
Chaotic era, chaotic era, chaotic era.
Damn it, stop! Why am I thinking about this? Why?
Soon, Wong found the answer. He had not played any computer games for years, and the hardware for gaming had clearly advanced greatly in the interim. The virtual reality and multisensory feedback were all effects he had not experienced as a young student. But Wong also knew that the sense of realism in 3body wasn't due to the interface technology. He remembered taking a class in information theory as a third-year student in college. The professor had put up 2 pictures. One was the famous Song Dynasty painting along the river during the Qingming festival, full of fine, rich details. The other was a photograph of the sky on a sunny day, the deep blue expanse broken only by a wisp of cloud that one couldn't even be sure was there. The professor asked the class which picture contained more information. The answer was that the photograph's information content, its entropy, exceeded the painting's by 1 or 2 orders of magnitude. 3body was the same. Its enormous information content was hidden deep. Wong could feel it, but he could not articulate it. He suddenly understood that the makers of 3body took the exact opposite of the approach taken by designers of other games. Normally, game designers tried to display as much information as possible to increase the sense of realism. But 3body's designers worked to compress the information content to disguise a more complex reality, just like that seemingly empty photograph of the sky. Wong let his mind wander back to the world of 3body.
Flying stars? The key must be in the flying stars. 1 flying star, 2 flying stars, 3 flying stars. What did they mean?
As he had that thought, he found himself at his destination. At the foot of the apartment building, Wong saw a graying, thin woman, about 60 years old. She wore glasses and was struggling to go up the stairs with a basket of groceries. He guessed that this was the woman he had come to see. A quick greeting confirmed his guess. She was Yang Dong's mother, Ye Wenxie. After hearing the purpose of Wang Miao's visit, she was grateful and appreciative. Wang was familiar with old intellectuals like her. The long years had ground away all the hardness and fierceness in their personalities, until all that was left was a gentleness like that of water. Wang carried the grocery basket up the stairs for her. When they got to her apartment, it turned out to be not as quiet as he had expected. 3 children were playing, the oldest about 5, and the youngest barely walking. Ye told Wang that they were all the neighbors' kids.
They like to play at my place. Today is Sunday, and their parents need to work overtime, so they left them to me. Oh, Nan. Have you finished your picture? Oh, it looks great. Shall we give it a title? Ducklings in the Sun? Sounds good. Let Granny write it for you. Then I'll put down the date. June 9th, by Nan. And what do you want to eat for lunch? Yang, you want fried eggplant? Sure. Nan, you want the snow peas like you had yesterday? No problem. How about you, Mimi? You want some meat? Oh, no, your mom told me that you shouldn't eat so much meat. Not easy to digest. How about some fishy instead? Look at this big fishy Granny bought.
Wang observed Ye and the children, absorbed in their conversation.
She must want grandkids. But even if Yang Dong were alive, would she have had children?
Ye took the groceries into the kitchen. When she re-emerged, she said,
Xiao Wang, I'm going to soak the vegetables for a while.
She had slipped effortlessly into addressing him by an affectionate diminutive.
These days they use so much pesticide that when I feed the children I have to soak the vegetables for at least 2 hours. Why don't you take a look in Dong Dong's room first?
Her suggestion, tagged on at the end as though it was the most natural thing in the world, made Wang anxious. Clearly she had figured out the real purpose of his visit.
She turned around and went back into the kitchen without giving Wong another glance, and so avoided seeing his embarrassment. Wong was grateful that she was so considerate of his feelings. Wong walked past the 3 happily playing children and entered the room that Ye had indicated. He paused in front of the door, seized by a strange feeling. It was as if he had returned to his dream-filled youth. From the depths of his memory arose a tingling sadness, fragile and pure like morning dew, tinged with a rosy hue. Gently, he pushed the door open. The faint fragrance that filled the room was unexpected, the smell of the forest. He seemed to have entered the hut of a ranger. The walls were covered by strips of bark. The 3 stools were unadorned tree stumps. The desk was made from 3 bigger tree stumps pushed together. And then there was the bed, apparently lined with ura sedge from northeast China, which the locals stuffed into their shoes to stay warm in the cold climate. Everything was rough-hewn and seemingly careless, without signs of aesthetic design. Yang-dong's job had earned her a high income, and she could have bought a home in some luxury development, but she chose to live here with her mother instead. Wong walked up to the tree stump desk. It was plainly furnished, and nothing on it betrayed a hint of femininity or scholarly interest. Maybe all such objects had been taken away, or maybe they had never been there. He noticed a black-and-white photograph in a wooden frame, a portrait of mother and daughter. In the picture, Yang-dong was just a little girl, and Ye Wenxie was crouching down so that they were the same height. A strong wind tangled the pair's long hair together. The background of the photograph was unusual. The sky seemed to be seen through a large net held up by thick steel supporting structures. Wong deduced that it was some kind of parabolic antenna, so large that its edges were beyond the frame of the photograph. In the picture, little Yang-dong's eyes gave off a fright that made Wong's heart ache. She seemed terrified by the world outside the picture. Next, Wong noticed a thick notebook at the corner of the desk. He was baffled by the material the notebook was made of until he saw a line of childish writing scrawled across the cover. Yang-dong's birch bark notebook. Birch was written in pinyin letters instead of using the character for it. The years had turned the silvery bark into a dull yellow. He reached out to touch the notebook, hesitated, and retracted his hand.
"It's okay,"
Ye said from the door.
"Those are pictures Dong drew when she was little."
Wong picked up the birch bark notebook and gently flipped through it. Ye had dated each picture for her daughter, just like she had been doing for Nan in the living room. Wong saw that based on the dates on the pictures, Yang-dong was 3 when she drew them. Normally, children of that age are able to draw humans and objects with clear shapes, but Yang-dong's pictures remained only messes of random lines. They seemed to express a kind of passionate anger and desperation born out of a frustrated desire to express something, not the sort of feeling one would expect in a child that young. Ye slowly sat down on the edge of the bed, her eyes staring at the notebook, lost in thought. Her daughter had died here, ended her life while she slept. Wong sat next to her. He had never felt such a strong desire to share the burden of another's pain. Ye took the birch bark notebook from him and held it to her chest. In a low voice, she said,
"I wasn't good at teaching Dong in an age-appropriate manner. I exposed her too early to some very abstract, very extreme topics. When she first expressed an interest in abstract theory, I told her that field wasn't easy for women. She said, 'What about Madame Curie?' I told her Madame Curie was never really accepted as part of that field. Her success was seen as a matter of persistence and hard work, but without her, someone else would have completed her work. As a matter of fact, Wu Qian-chiung went even further than Madame Curie, but it really isn't a woman's field." Dong didn't argue with me, but I later discovered that she really was different. For example, Let's say I explained a formula to her. Other children might say, "What a clever formula." But she would say, "This formula is so elegant, so beautiful." The expression on her face was the same as when she saw a pretty wildflower. Her father left behind some records. She listened to all of them and finally picked something by Bach as her favorite, listening to it over and over. That was the kind of music that shouldn't have mesmerized a kid. At first I thought she picked it on a whim, but when I asked her how she felt about the music, she said that she could see in the music a giant building, a large, complex house. Bit by bit, the giant added to the structure, and when the music was over, the house was done.
"You were a great teacher for your daughter," Wang said.
No, I failed. Her world was too simple, and all she had were ethereal theories. When they collapsed, she had nothing to lean on to keep on living. Professor, I can't say that I agree with you. Right now, events are happening that are beyond our imagination. It's an unprecedented challenge to our theories about the world, and she's not the only scientist to have stumbled down that path. But she was a woman. A woman should be like water, able to flow over and around anything.
As Wang was about to leave, he remembered the other purpose for his visit. He mentioned to Ye his wish to observe the cosmic microwave background.
"Oh, that. There are 2 places in China that work on it. One is an observatory in Urumqi. I think it's a project by the Chinese Academy of Sciences Space Environment Observation Center. The other is very close by, a radio astronomy observatory located in the suburbs of Beijing, which is run by the Chinese Academy of Sciences and Peking University's Joint Center for Astrophysics. The one in Urumqi does ground observation, and the one here just receives data from satellites, though the satellite data is more accurate and complete. I have a former student working there, and I can make a call for you."
Ye found the phone number and dialed it. The ensuing conversation seemed to go smoothly.
"You're all set?"
Ye said as she hung up.
"Let me give you the address. You can go over any time. My student's name is Sha Rui Shan, but he's going to be working the night shift tomorrow. I don't think this is your field of research, right?" "I work in nanotech. This is for something else."
Wang was afraid that Ye was going to ask more questions about why he sought this information, but she did not.
"Xiao Wang, you look a bit pale. How's your health?"
she asked, her face full of concern.
"It's nothing. Please don't worry." "Wait a moment."
Ye took a small wooden box out of a cabinet. Wang saw from the label that it was ginseng.
"An old friend from the base, a soldier, came to visit me a few days ago and brought this. Take it, take it. It's cultivated, not very precious. I have high blood pressure and can't use it anyway. You can slice it thinly and make it into a tea. You look so pale that I'm sure you can use the enrichment. You're still young, but you have to watch your health."
Wang accepted the box, warmth filling his chest. His eyes moistened. It was as though his heart, stressed almost beyond the breaking point by the last few days, had been placed onto a pile of soft down feathers.
"Professor, I will come visit you often."
9. The universe flickers. Wang Miao drove along Jingmi Road until he was in Miyun County. From there he headed to Heilongtan, climbed up the mountain along a winding road, and arrived at the Radio Astronomy Observatory of the Chinese Academy of Sciences National Astronomical Center. He saw a line of 28 parabolic antenna dishes, each with a diameter of 9 meters, like a row of spectacular steel plants. At the end were two tall radio telescopes with dishes 50 meters in diameter, built in 2006. As he drove closer, Wong could not help but think of the background in the picture of Ye and her daughter. But the work of Shah Ruishan, Ye's student, had nothing to do with these radio telescopes. Dr. Shah's lab was mainly responsible for receiving the data transmitted from 3 satellites: the Cosmic Background Explorer, COBE, launched in November of 1989 and about to be retired; the Wilkinson Microwave Anisotropy Probe, WMAP, launched in 2003, and Planck, the space observatory launched by the European Space Agency in 2009. Cosmic microwave background radiation very precisely matched the thermal black body spectrum at a temperature of 2.7255 K and was highly isotropic, meaning nearly uniform in every direction, with only tiny temperature fluctuations at the parts per million range. Shah Ruishan's job was to create a more detailed map of the cosmic microwave background using observational data. The lab wasn't very big. Equipment for receiving satellite data was squeezed into the main computer room, and 3 terminals displayed the information sent by the 3 satellites. Shah was excited to see Wong. Clearly bored with his long isolation and happy to have a visitor, he asked Wong what kind of data he wanted to see.
I want to see the overall fluctuation in the cosmic microwave background.
Can you be more specific?
What I mean is, I want to see the isotropic fluctuation in the overall cosmic microwave background between 1 and 5%, he said, quoting from Shen's email. Shah grinned. Starting at the turn of the century, the Miyun Radio Astronomy Observatory had opened itself to visitors. In order to earn some extra income, Shah often played the role of tour guide or gave lectures. This was the grin he reserved for tourists, as he had grown used to their astounding scientific illiteracy. Mr. Wong, I take it you're not a specialist in the field. I work in nanotech.
Makes sense. But you must have some basic understanding of the cosmic microwave background.
I don't know much. I know that as the universe cooled after the Big Bang, the leftover embers became the cosmic microwave background. The radiation fills the entire universe and can be observed in the centimeter wavelength range. I think it was back in the 60s when 2 Americans accidentally discovered the radiation when they were testing a supersensitive satellite reception antenna.
That's more than enough, Shah interrupted, waving his hands. Then you must know that unlike the local variations we observe in different parts of the universe, the overall fluctuation in the cosmic microwave background is correlated with the expansion of the universe. It's a very slow change, measured at the scale of the age of the universe. Even with the sensitivity of the Planck satellite, continuous observation for 1 million years might not detect any such shift. But you want to see a 5% fluctuation tonight? Do you realize what that would mean? The universe would flicker like a fluorescent tube that's about to burn out.
And it will be flickering for me,
Wong thought. This must be some joke from Professor Ye, Shah said.
Nothing would please me more than to discover that it was a joke,
Wong said. He was about to tell Shah that Ye didn't know the details of his request, but he was afraid that Shah would then refuse to help him. Well, since Professor Ye asked me to help you, let's do the observation. It's not a big deal. If you just need 1% precision, data from the antique COBE is sufficient. As he spoke, Shah typed quickly at the terminal. Soon a flat green line appeared on the screen. This curve is the real-time measurement of the overall cosmic microwave background. Calling it a straight line would be more accurate. The temperature is 2.725 plus or minus 0.002 K. The error range is due to the Doppler effect from the motion of the Milky Way, which has already been filtered out. If the kind of fluctuation you anticipate, in excess of 1%, occurs, this line would turn red and become a waveform. I would bet that it's going to stay a flat green line until the end of the world, though. If you want to see it show the kind of fluctuation observable by the naked eye, you might have to wait until long after the death of the sun.
I'm not interfering in your work, am I?
No. Since you need such low precision, we can just use some basic data from Kobe. Okay, it's all set. From now on, if such great fluctuations occur, the data will be automatically saved to disk.
I think it might happen around 1 o'clock a.m.
Wow, so precise. No problem, since I'm working the night shift anyway. Hey, have you had dinner yet? Good. Well, then I'll take you on a tour. The night was moonless. They walked along the row of antenna dishes, and Shaw pointed to them. Breathtaking, aren't they? That's too bad that they're all like the ears of a deaf man.
Why?
Ever since construction was completed, interference has been unceasing in the observational bands. First, there were the paging stations during the 80s, and now it's the scramble to develop mobile communications networks and cell towers. These telescopes are capable of many scientific tasks, surveying the sky, detecting variable radio sources, observing the remains of supernovae, but we can't perform most of them. We've complained to the State Regulatory Radio Commission many times, never with any results. How can we get more attention than China Mobile, China Unicom, China Netcom? Without money, the secrets of the universe are worse shit. At least my project only depends on satellite data and has nothing to do with these tourist attractions.
In recent years, commercial operation of basic research has been fairly successful, like in high-energy physics. Maybe it would be better if the observatories were built in places farther away from cities.
It all comes down to money. Right now, our only choice is to find technical means to shield against interference. Well, it would be much better if Professor Yeh were here. She accomplished a lot in this field.
So the topic of conversation turned to Ye Wenxie, and from her student, Wang finally learned about her life. He listened as Shaw told of how she witnessed the death of her father during the Cultural Revolution, how she was falsely accused at the Production and Construction Corps, how she then seemed to disappear until her return to Beijing at the beginning of the 90s, when she began teaching astrophysics at Tsinghua, where her father had also taught, until her retirement.
It was only recently revealed that she'd spent more than 20 years at Red Coast Base.
Wang was stunned.
You mean those rumors?
Most turned out to be true. One of the researchers who developed the deciphering system for the Red Coast project emigrated to Europe and wrote a book last year. Most of the rumors you hear came out of that book. Many who participated in Red Coast are still alive.
That is, a fantastical legend.
Especially for it to happen during those years. Absolutely incredible.
They continued to speak for a while. Shaw asked the purpose behind Wang's strange request. Wang avoided giving a straight answer, and Shaw didn't press. The dignity of a specialist did not allow Shaw to express too much interest in a request that clearly went against his professional knowledge. Then they went to an all-night bar for tourists and sat for 2 hours. As Shaw finished one beer after another, his tongue loosened even more. But Wang became anxious, and his mind kept returning to that green line on the terminal in Shaw's office. It was only at 10 to 1 in the morning that Shaw finally gave in to Wang's repeated pleas to go back to the lab. The spotlights that had lit up the row of radio antennas had been turned off, and the antennas now formed a simple two-dimensional picture against the night sky, like a series of abstract symbols. All of them gazed up at the sky at the same angle, as though waiting expectantly for something. The scene made Wang shudder despite the warmth of the spring evening. He was reminded of the giant pendulums in 3body. They arrived back at the lab at 1. As they looked at the terminal, the fluctuation was just getting started. The flat line turned into a wave, the distance between one peak and the next inconstant. The line's color became red, like a snake awakening after hibernation, wriggling as its skin refilled with blood.
It must be a malfunction in Kobe. Shaw stared at the waveform, terrified.
It's not a malfunction.
Wong's tone was exceedingly calm. He had learned to control himself when faced with such sights. "We'll know soon enough," Shaw said. He went to the other two terminals and typed rapidly to bring up the data gathered by the other two satellites, WMAP and Planck. Now, 3 waveforms moved in sync across the 3 terminals, exactly alike. Shaw took out a notebook computer and rushed to turn it on. He plugged in a network cable and picked up the phone. Wong could tell from the one-sided conversation that he was trying to get in touch with the Urumqi Radio Astronomy Observatory. He didn't explain to Wong what he was doing. His eyes locked onto the browser window on the notebook. Wong could hear his rapid breathing. A few minutes later, a red waveform appeared in the browser window, moving in step with the other 3. The 3 satellites and the ground-based observatory confirmed one fact: the universe was flickering.
Can you print out the waveform?
Wong asked. Shaw wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and nodded. He moved his mouse and clicked print. Wong grabbed the first page as soon as it came out of the laser printer and with a pencil began to match the distance between the peaks with the Morse code chart he took out of his pocket.
Short, long, 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 long. Short, long, 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 long. Long, 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 long. Long, 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 short, short. Long, 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 short, short, short. Short, short, long, long, long. Short, long, 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 long. Long, 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 short, short, short. Short, 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 long, long. Long, long, short, short, short. That's 1108:21:37.
Wong thought.
Short, long, 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 short, long, 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 short, short, long, 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 short, 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 long, 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 short, long, 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 short, 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 long, 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 short, 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 short. That's 1108:21:36.
The countdown continued at the scale of the universe. 92 hours had already elapsed, and only 1,108 hours remained. Shaw paced back and forth anxiously, pausing from time to time to look at the sequence of numbers Wong was writing down. "Can't you tell me what's going on?" he shouted.
I can't possibly explain this to you, Dr. Shaw. Trust me.
Wong pushed away the pile of papers filled with waveforms. As he stared at the sequence of numbers, he said,
Maybe the 3 satellites and the observatory are all malfunctioning.
"You know that's impossible."
What if it's sabotage?
"Also impossible. To simultaneously alter the data from 3 satellites and an observatory on Earth? You're talking about a supernatural saboteur." Wong nodded. Compared to the idea of the universe flickering, he would prefer a supernatural saboteur. But Shaw then deprived him of this last glimmer of hope. "It's easy to confirm this. If the cosmic microwave background is fluctuating this much, we should be able to see it with our own eyes."
What are you talking about? The wavelength of the cosmic microwave background is 7 centimeters. That's 5 orders of magnitude longer than the wavelength of visible light. How can we possibly see it?
Using 3K glasses?
3K glasses?
It's a sort of science toy we made for the Capitol Planetarium. With our current level of technology, we could take the 6-meter horn antenna used by Penzias and Wilson almost half a century ago to discover the cosmic microwave background and miniaturize it to the size of a pair of glasses. Then we added a converter in the glasses to compress the detected radiation by 5 orders of magnitude so that 7-centimeter waves are turned into visible red light. This way visitors can put on the glasses at night and observe the cosmic microwave background on their own. And now we can use it to see the universe flicker.
Where can I find these glasses?
At the Capitol Planetarium. We made more than 20 pairs.
I must get my hands on a pair before 5.
Shaw picked up the phone. The other side picked up only after a long while. Shaw had to expend a lot of energy to convince the person awakened in the middle of the night to go to the planetarium and wait for Wong's arrival in an hour. As Wong left, Shaw said, "I won't go with you. What I've seen is enough, and I don't need any more confirmation. But I hope that you will explain the truth to me when you feel the time is right. If this phenomenon should lead to some research result, I won't forget you." Wong opened the car door and said,
The flickering will stop at 5 in the morning. I'd suggest you not pursue it after this. Believe me, you won't get anywhere."
Shaw stared at Wong for a long time, and then nodded. "I understand. Strange things have been happening to scientists lately."
"Yes."
Wong ducked into the car. He didn't want to discuss the subject any further. "Is it our turn?"
"It's my turn, at least."
Wong started the engine. An hour later, Wong arrived at the new planetarium and got out of the car. The bright lights of the city penetrated the translucent walls of the immense glass building and dimly revealed its internal structure. Wong thought that if the architect had intended to express a feeling about the universe, the design was a success. The more transparent something was, the more mysterious it seemed. The universe itself was transparent. As long as you were sufficiently sharp-eyed, you could see as far as you liked, but the farther you looked, the more mysterious it became. The sleepy-eyed planetarium staffer was waiting by the door for Wong. He handed him a small suitcase and said,
"There are 5 pairs of 3K glasses in there, all fully charged. The left button switches it on. The right dial is for adjusting brightness. I have a dozen more pairs upstairs. You can look as much as you like, but I'm going to take a nap now in the room over there. Oh, this Dr. Shaw must be mental."
He went into the dim interior of the planetarium. Wong opened the suitcase on the back seat of his car and took out a pair of 3K glasses. It resembled the display inside the panoramic viewing helmet of the V-suit. He put the glasses on and looked around. The city looked the same as before, only dimmer. Then he remembered that he had to switch them on. The city turned into many hazy, glowing halos. Most were fixed, but a few flickered or moved. He realized that these were sources of radiation in the centimeter range, all now converted to visible light. At the heart of each halo was a radiation source. Because the original wavelengths were so long, it was impossible to see their shapes clearly. He lifted his head and saw a sky glowing with a faint red light. Just like that, he was seeing the cosmic microwave background. The red light had come from more than 10 billion years ago. It was the remnants of the Big Bang, the still warm embers of creation. He could not see any stars. Normally, since visible light would be compressed to invisible by the glasses, each star should appear as a black dot. But the diffraction of centimeter-wave radiation overwhelmed all other shapes and details. Once his eyes had grown used to the sight, Wong could see that the faint red background was indeed pulsing. The entire sky flickered, as if the universe was but a quivering lamp in the wind. Standing under the flashing dome of the night sky, Wong suddenly felt the universe shrink until it was so small that only he was imprisoned in it. The universe was a cramped heart, and the red light that suffused everything was the translucent blood that filled the organ. Suspended in the blood, he saw that the flickering of the red light was not periodic. The pulsing was irregular. He felt a strange, perverse, immense presence that could never be understood by human intellect. Wong took off the 3K glasses and sat down weakly on the ground, leaning against the wheel of his car. The city at night gradually recovered the reality of visible light, but his eyes roamed, trying to capture other sights. By the entrance of the zoo across the street, there was a row of neon lights. One of the lights was about to burn out and flickered irregularly. Nearby, a small tree's leaves trembled in the night breeze, twinkling without pattern as they reflected streetlight. In the distance, the red star atop the Beijing Exhibition Center's Russian-style spire reflected the light from the cars passing below, also twinkling randomly. Wong tried to interpret the flickers as Morse code. He even felt that the wrinkles in the flags flapping next to him and the ripples in the puddle on the side of the road might be sending him messages. He struggled to understand all the messages and felt the passing of the countdown second by second. He didn't know how long he stayed there. The planetarium staffer finally emerged and asked him whether he was done. But when he saw Wong's face, sleep disappeared from the staffer's eyes and was replaced by fear. He packed up the 3K glasses, stared at Wong for a few seconds, and quickly left with the suitcase. Wong took out his mobile and dialed Shen Yufei's number. She picked up right away. Perhaps she was also suffering from insomnia.
"What happens at the end of the countdown?"
Wong asked.
"I don't know."
She hung up.
"What can it be? Maybe my own death, like Yang Dong's. Or maybe it will be a disaster, like the great tsunami that swept through the Indian Ocean more than a decade ago. No one will connect it to my nanotech research. Could it be that every previous great disaster, including the 2 world wars, was also the result of reaching the end of ghostly countdowns? Could it be that every time there was someone like me, who no one thought of, who bore the ultimate responsibility? Or maybe it signals the end of the whole world. In this perverse world, that would be a relief."
One thing was certain. No matter what was at the end of the countdown, in the remaining 1,000 or so hours, the possibilities would torture him cruelly, like demons, until he suffered a complete mental breakdown. Wong ducked back into the car and left the planetarium. Just before dawn, the roads were relatively empty, but he didn't dare to drive too fast, feeling that the faster the car moved, the faster the countdown would go. When a glimmer of light appeared in the eastern sky, he parked and walked around aimlessly. His mind was empty of thoughts. Only the countdown pulsed against the dim red background of cosmic radiation. He seemed to have turned into nothing but a simple timer, a bell that tolled for he knew not whom. The sky brightened. He was tired, so he sat down on a bench. When he lifted his head to see where his subconscious had brought him, he shivered. He sat in front of St. Joseph's Church at Wong Fu Tsing. In the pale white light of dawn, the church's Romanesque vaults appeared as 3 giant fingers pointing out something in space for him. As Wong got up to leave, he was held back by a snippet of hymnal music. It wasn't Sunday, so it was likely a choir rehearsal. The song was "Come, Gracious Spirit, Heavenly Dove." As he listened to the solemn, sacred music, Wong Miao once again felt that the universe had shrunk until it was the size of an empty church. The domed ceiling was hidden by the flashing red light of the background radiation, and he was an ant crawling through the cracks in the floor. He felt a giant, invisible hand caressing his trembling heart, and he was once again a helpless babe. Something deep in his mind that had once held him up softened like wax and collapsed. He covered his eyes and began to cry. Wong's cries were interrupted by laughter.
"Another one bites the dust."
He turned around. Captain Shi Qiang stood there, blowing out a mouthful of white smoke. 10. Da Shi. Shi sat down next to Wong and handed him his car keys.
"You parked right at the intersection of Dongdan. If I'd arrived just a minute later, the traffic cops would have had it towed."
"Da Shi, if I had known you were following me, I would have been comforted,"
Wong thought, switching to Shi Qiang's familiar nickname in his mind, though self-respect made him hold back the words. He accepted a cigarette from Da Shi, lit it, and took his first drag since he quit several years ago.
"So, how's it going, buddy? Finding it hard to bear? I said you couldn't handle it, and you insisted on playing the tough guy."
"You wouldn't understand."
Wong took several more deep puffs.
"Your problem is you understand too well. Fine, let's go grab a bite."
"I'm not hungry."
"Then we'll go drinking. My treat."
Wong got into Da Shi's car, and they drove to a small restaurant nearby. It was still early, and the place was deserted.
2 orders of quick fried tripe and a bottle of erguato,
Da Shi shouted, without even looking up. He was obviously a regular here. As he stared at the 2 plates filled with black slices of tripe, Wong's empty stomach began to churn, and he thought he was going to be sick. Da Shi ordered him some warm soy milk and fried pancakes, and Wong forced himself to eat some. Then they drank shots of erguato. He began to feel lightheaded, and his tongue loosened. Gradually, he recounted the events of the last 3 days to Da Shi, even though he knew that Da Shi probably knew everything already. Maybe Da Shi even knew more than he did.
You're saying that the universe was winking at you?
Da Shi asked as he slurped down strips of tripe like noodles.
That's a very appropriate metaphor.
Bullshit.
Your lack of fear is based on your ignorance.
More bullshit. Come, drink.
Wong finished another shot. Now the world was spinning around him, and only the tripe-chomping Shi Qiang across from him remained stable. He said,
Da Shi, have you ever considered certain ultimate philosophical questions? For example, where does man come from? Where does man go? Where does the universe come from? Where does the universe go, etc.?
Nope.
Never?
Never.
You must see the stars. Aren't you awed and curious?
I never look at the sky at night.
How is that possible? I thought you often worked the night shift.
Buddy, when I work at night, if I look up at the sky, the suspect is gonna escape.
We really have nothing to say to each other. All right. Drink.
To be honest, even if I were to look at the stars in the sky, I wouldn't be thinking about your philosophical questions. I have too much to worry about. I gotta pay the mortgage, save for the kids' college, and handle the endless stream of cases. I'm a simple man without a lot of complicated twists and turns. Look down my throat and you can see out my ass. Naturally, I don't know how to make my bosses like me. Years after being discharged from the army, my career is going nowhere. If I weren't pretty good at my job, I would have been kicked out a long time ago. You think that's not enough for me to worry about? You think I've got the energy to gaze at stars and philosophize?
You're right. All right, drink up.
But I did indeed invent an ultimate rule.
Tell me.
Anything sufficiently weird must be fishy.
What kind of crappy rule is that?
I'm saying that there's always someone behind things that don't seem to have an explanation.
If you had even basic knowledge of science, you'd know it's impossible for any force to accomplish the things I experienced, especially that last one. To manipulate things at the scale of the universe? Not only can you not explain it with our current science, I couldn't even imagine how to explain it outside of science. It's more than supernatural. It's I don't know what.
I'm telling you that's bullshit. I've seen plenty of weird things.
Then tell me what I should do next.
Keep on drinking, and then sleep.
Fine.
Wang Miao had no idea how he got back into his car. He tumbled into the back seat and fell into a dreamless slumber. He didn't think that he was asleep for long, but when he opened his eyes, the sun was already near the horizon in the west. He got out of the car. Even though the alcohol that morning had made him weak, he did feel better. He saw that he was at one corner of the Forbidden City. The setting sun shone on the ancient palace and turned into bright gold ripples in the moat. In his eyes, the world became, once again, classical and stable. Wang sat until it got dark, enjoying the peace that had been missing from his life. The black Volkswagen Santana that he was now so familiar with pulled out of the traffic streaming through the street and braked to a stop right in front of him. Shi Qiang got out of the car.
Slept well?
Da Shi growled.
Yes. What next?
Oh, you? Go have dinner, then drink a little more, then sleep again.
Then what?
Then? Don't you have to go to work tomorrow?
But the countdown. There's only 1,091 hours left.
Fuck the countdown. Your first priority right now is to make sure you can stand straight and not collapse into a heap. Then we can talk about other things.
Da Shi, can you tell me something about what's really going on? I'm begging you.
Da Shi stared at Wang a while. Then he laughed.
I've said the very same thing to General Chung several times. We're in the same boat, you and I. I'll be honest. I know fucking shit. My pay grade is too low, and they tell me nothing. Sometimes, I think this is a nightmare.
But you must know more than I.
Fine. I'll tell you what little I know.
Da Shi pointed to the shore of the moat around the Forbidden City. The two found a spot and sat down. It was now night, and traffic flowed ceaselessly behind them like a river. They watched their shadows lengthening and shortening over the moat.
In my line of work, it's all about putting together many apparently unconnected things. When you piece them together the right way, you get the truth. For a while now, strange things have been happening. For example, there's been an unprecedented wave of crimes against academia and science research institutions. Of course, you know about the explosion at the Liangxiang Accelerator construction site. There was also the murder of that Nobel laureate. The crimes were all unusual. Not for money, not for revenge. No political background, just pure destruction. Other strange things didn't involve crimes. For example, the frontiers of science and the suicides of those academics. Environmental activists have also become extra bold. Protest mobs at construction sites to stop nuclear power plants and hydroelectric dams. Experimental communities returning to nature. And other apparently trivial matters. Do you go to the movies?
No, not really.
Recent big-budget films all have rustic themes. The setting is always green mountains and clear water, with handsome men and pretty women of some indeterminate era living in harmony with nature. To use the words of the directors, they represent the beautiful life before science spoiled nature. Take Peach Blossom Spring. It's clearly the sort of film that no one wants to see, but they spent hundreds of millions to make it. There was also this science fiction contest with the top reward of $5 million for the person who imagined the most disgusting possible future. They spent another few $100 million to turn the winning stories into movies. And then you've got all these strange cults popping up everywhere, where every cult leader seems to have a lot of money.
What does that last bit have to do with everything you mentioned before?
You have to connect all the dots. Of course, I didn't need to busy myself with such concerns before. But after I was transferred from the crime unit to the Battle Command Center, it became part of my job. Even General Chung is impressed by my talent for connecting the dots.
And your conclusion?
Everything that's happening is coordinated by someone behind the scenes with one goal: to completely ruin scientific research.
Who?
I have no idea, but I can sense the plan. A very comprehensive, intricate plan. Damage scientific research installations, kill scientists, drive scientists like you crazy and make you commit suicide. But the main goal is to misdirect your thoughts until you're even more foolish than ordinary people.
Your last statement is really perceptive.
At the same time, they want to ruin science's reputation in society. Of course, some people have always engaged in anti-science activities, but now it's coordinated.
I believe it.
Now you believe me. So many of you scientific elites couldn't figure it out, and I, having gone only to vocational school, had the answer? Ha! After I explained my theory, the scholars and my bosses all ridiculed it.
If you had told me your theory back then, I'm sure I wouldn't have laughed at you. Take those frauds who practice pseudoscience. Do you know who they're most afraid of?
Scientists, of course.
No. Many of the best scientists can be fooled by pseudoscience, and sometimes devote their lives to it. But pseudoscience is afraid of one particular type of people who are very hard to fool. Stage magicians. In fact, many pseudoscientific hoaxes were exposed by stage magicians. Compared to the bookworms of the scientific world, your experience as a cop makes you far more likely to perceive such a large-scale conspiracy.
Well, there are plenty of people smarter than me. People in positions of power well aware of the plot. When they ridiculed me at first, it was only because I wasn't explaining my theory to the right people. Later on, my old company commander, General Chung, had me transferred, but I'm still not doing anything other than running errands. That's it. Now you know as much as I do.
Another question. What does this have to do with the military?
I was baffled too. I asked them, and they said that now that there's a war, of course the military would be involved. I was like you, thinking that they were talking nonsense. But no, they weren't joking. The Army really is on high alert. There are 20-some battle command centers like ours around the globe, and above them, there's another level of command structure. But no one knows the details.
Who's the enemy?
No idea. NATO officers are now stationed in the war room of the PLA General Staff Department, and a bunch of PLA officers are working out of the Pentagon. Who the fuck knows who we're fighting?
This is all so bizarre. Are you sure it's all true?
A bunch of my old buddies from the Army are now generals, so I know a few things.
The media has no idea about any of this?
That's another thing. All the countries are keeping a tight lid on this, and they've been successful so far. I can guarantee you that the enemy is incredibly powerful. Those in charge are terrified. I know General Chung very well. He's the sort who's afraid of nothing, not even the sky falling. But I can tell that he's worried about something much worse right now. They're all scared out of their wits, and they have no confidence that we'll win.
If what you say is true, then we should all be frightened.
Everyone is afraid of something. The enemy must be too. The more powerful they are, the more they have to lose to their fears.
What do you think the enemy is afraid of?
You! Scientists! The odd thing is that the less practical your research is, the more they're afraid of you. Like abstract theories, the kind of thing Yang Dong worked on. They're more frightened of such work than you are of the universe winking at you. That's why they're so ruthless. If killing you would solve the problem, you'd all be dead by now. But the most effective technique remains disrupting your thoughts. When a scientist dies, another will take his place. But if his thoughts are confused, then science is over.
You're saying they're afraid of fundamental science?
Yes, fundamental science.
But my research is very different in nature from Young Dong's. The nanomaterial I work on isn't fundamental science. It's just a very strong material. What's the threat to them?
You're a special case. Usually they don't bother those engaged in applied research. Maybe the material you're developing really scares them.
Then what should I do?
Go to work and keep up your research. That's the best way to strike back at them. Don't worry about that shitty countdown. If you want to relax a bit after work, play that game. If you can beat it, that might help.
That game? 3body? You think it's connected to all this?
Definitely connected. I know that several specialists at the Battle Command Center are playing it too. It's no ordinary game. Someone like me, fearless, out of ignorance, can't play it. It has to be someone knowledgeable like you.
Anything else?
No. But if I find out more, I'll let you know. Keep your phone on, buddy. Keep your head screwed on straight. And if you get scared again, just remember my ultimate rule.
Da Shi drove away before Wong had a chance to thank him. 11. 3body. Mo Tzu and fiery flames. Wong Miao returned home, stopping on the way to buy a V-suit. His wife told him that people from work had been trying to get a hold of him all day. Wong turned on his phone, checked his messages, and returned a few calls. He promised he'd be at work tomorrow. At dinner, he followed Da Shi's advice and drank some more. But he didn't feel sleepy. After his wife went to bed, he sat in front of the computer, put on his new V-suit, and logged into 3body. Desolate plain at dawn. Wong stood in front of King Zhou's pyramid. The snow that had once covered it was gone, and the blocks of stone were pockmarked by erosion. The ground was now a different color. In the distance were a few massive buildings that Wong guessed were dehydratories, but they were of a different design than the ones he had seen last time. Everything told him that eons had passed. By the faint dawn light, Wong looked for the entrance. When he found it, he saw that the opening had been sealed by blocks of stone. But next to it there was now a staircase carved into the pyramid, leading all the way to the apex. He looked up and saw that the top had been flattened into a platform. The pyramid, once Egyptian in style, now resembled an Aztec one. Wong climbed up the stairs and reached the apex. The platform looked like an ancient astronomical observatory. In one corner was a telescope several meters high, and next to it were a few smaller telescopes. In another corner were a few strange instruments that reminded him of ancient Chinese armillary spheres, models of objects in the sky. His attention was drawn to the large copper sphere in the center of the platform. 2 meters in diameter, it was set on top of a complex machine. Propelled by countless gears, the sphere slowly rotated. Wong noticed that the direction and speed of its rotation constantly shifted. Below the machine was a large square cavity. By the faint torchlight within, Wong saw a few slave-like figures pushing a spoked horizontal wheel, which provided the power to the machine above. A man walked toward Wong. Like King Wen, when Wong had first encountered him, the man had his back against the sliver of light on the horizon, and he appeared to Wong as a pair of bright eyes floating in the darkness. He was slender and tall, dressed in a flowing black robe, his hair carelessly knotted on top of his head with a few strands waving in the wind.
"Hello,"
the man said.
"I'm Mo Tzu."
Hello, I'm Hiron.
Ah, I know you.
Moza grew excited.
You were a follower of King Wen back in Civilization number 137.
I did follow him here, but I never believed his theories.
You're right.
Moza nodded at Wong solemnly. Then he moved closer.
During the 362,000 years you've been away, civilization has been reborn 4 more times. These civilizations struggled to develop through the irregular alternation of chaotic eras and stable eras. The shortest-lived one got only halfway through the Stone Age, but civilization number 139 broke a record and developed all the way to the Steam Age.
You're saying that people from that civilization found the laws governing the sun's motion?
Moza laughed and shook his head.
Not at all. They were just lucky.
But the effort to do so has never ceased?
Of course not. Come, let us see the efforts of the last civilization.
Moza led Wong to a corner of the observatory platform. The ground spread out beneath them like an ancient piece of leather. Moza aimed one of the smaller telescopes at a target on the ground and gestured for Wong to look. Wong looked through the eyepiece and saw a strange sight, a skeleton. In the dawn light, it gave off a snow-white glint and appeared to be very refined. Astonishingly, the skeleton stood on its own. Its posture was graceful and elegant. One hand was held below the chin, as though stroking a long missing beard. Its head tilted slightly up, as though questioning sky and earth.
That's Confucius,
Moza said.
He believed that everything had to fit Li, the Confucian conception of order and propriety, and nothing in the universe could be exempt from it. He created a system of rights and hoped to predict the motion of the sun with it.
I can imagine the result.
Right you are. He calculated how the sun would follow the rights and predicted a 5-year stable era. And you know what? There was indeed a stable era, lasting a month.
And then one day the sun just didn't come out?
No, the sun rose that day as well. It rose to the middle of the sky and then went out.
What? Went out?
Yes. It gradually dimmed, became smaller, and then went out all of a sudden. Night fell. Oh, the cold. Confucius stood there and froze into a column of ice. And there he remains.
Was there anything remaining in the sky after the sun went out?
A flying star appeared in that location, like a soul left behind after the sun died.
You're sure that the sun really disappeared suddenly and the flying star appeared just as suddenly?
Yes, absolutely. You can check the historical annals. It was clearly recorded.
Wong thought hard about this information. He had already formed some vague ideas about the workings of the world of 3body, but this bit of news from Moza overturned all his theories.
How can it be sudden?
He muttered in annoyance.
We're now in the Han Dynasty. I'm not sure if it's the Western Han or the Eastern Han.
You've stayed alive until now?
I have a mission, observing the precise movements of the sun. Those shamans, metaphysicians, and Taoists are all useless. Like those proverbial bookish men who could not even tell types of grains apart, they do not labor with their hands, and know nothing practical. They have no ability to do experiments, and they're immersed in their mysticism all day long. But I'm different. I know how to make things.
He pointed to the numerous instruments on the platform.
Do you think these can lead you to your goal?
Wong nodded specifically at the giant copper sphere.
I have theories too, but they're not mystical. They're derived from a large number of observations. First, do you know what the universe is? It's a machine.
That's not very insightful.
Let me be more specific. The universe is a hollow sphere floating in the middle of a sea of fire. There are numerous tiny holes in the surface of the sphere, as well as a large one. The light from the sea of flame shines through these holes. The tiny ones are stars, and the large one is the sun.
That's a very interesting model.
Wong looked at the giant copper sphere again and guessed at its purpose.
But there's a problem with your theory. When the sun rises or sets, we can see its motion against the background of fixed stars. But in your hollow sphere, all the holes remain in fixed positions relative to each other.
Correct. That's why I've modified my model. The universal sphere is made of two spheres, one inside the other. The sky we can see is the surface of the inner sphere. The outer sphere has one large hole, while the inner sphere has many small holes. The light coming through the hole in the outer sphere is reflected and scattered many times in the space between the two spheres, filling it with light. Then the light comes in through the tiny holes in the inner sphere, and that's how we see the stars.
What about the sun?
The sun is the result of the large hole in the outer sphere being projected onto the inner one. The projection is so bright that it penetrates the inner sphere like the shell of an egg, and that's how we see the sun. Around the spot of light, the scattered light rays are also very bright and can be seen through the inner shell. That is why we can see a clear sky during the day.
What is the force that propels the two spheres in their irregular motion?
It's the force of the sea of fire outside the two spheres.
But the sun's brightness and size change over time. In your double shell model, the sun's size and brightness ought to be fixed. Even if the brightness of the flames in the sea of fire is inconstant, the size of the hole would not be.
Your conception of this model is too simplistic. As conditions in the sea of fire shift and change, the two shells will expand and shrink. This leads to changes in the size and brightness of the sun.
What about the flying stars?
Flying stars? Why do you care about them? They're not important. Maybe just some random dust flying about the inside of the universal spheres.
No, I think the flying stars are extremely important. Otherwise, how does your model explain the sudden extinguishing of the sun during the time of Confucius?
That's a rare exception. Maybe it was because a dark spot or cloud in the sea of fire just happened to pass over the big hole in the outer shell.
Wong pointed to the large copper sphere.
This must be your model, then?
Yes. I built a machine to replicate the universe. The complex gears that move the sphere simulate the forces from the sea of fire. The laws governing such motion are based on the distribution of flames in the sea of fire and the currents within it. I deduced them from hundreds of years of observations.
Can this sphere contract and expand?
Of course. Right now, it's slowly contracting.
Wong used the handrail at the edge of the platform as a fixed visual reference. He found Mo-Tsa's assertion to be true.
And there's an inner shell inside this sphere?
Of course. The inner shell moves within the outer shell through another complex set of mechanisms.
Truly a skillfully designed machine.
Wong's praise was heartfelt.
But I don't see a large hole in the outer shell to cast the sun's light onto the inner shell.
There is no hole. On the inner surface of the outer shell, I have installed a source of light to simulate the hole. The light source is made of the luminescent material gathered from hundreds of thousands of fireflies. I used a cool light because the inner shell is made of translucent plaster, which is not a good heat conductor. This way I can avoid the problem of too much heat accumulating inside the sphere that we would have with a regular source of light. The observer can then stay inside for a long time.
There's a person inside the sphere?
Yes. A clerk stands on top of a shelf with a wheeled base that is kept at the center of the sphere. After we set up the model universe to correspond to the current state of the real universe, the motion of the model thereafter should be an accurate simulation of the future, including the motion of the sun. After the clerk records the movements of the sun, we will have a precise calendar. This is the dream of hundreds of civilizations before us. And it looks like you have come at an opportune time.
According to the model universe, a 4-year-long stable era is about to begin. Emperor Wu of Han has just issued the order to rehydrate based on my prediction. Let's wait for sunrise.
Motza brought up the game's interface and slightly increased the rate of passage of game time. A red sun rose above the horizon, and the numerous frozen lakes and ponds scattered over the plain began to melt. These lakes had been covered by dust and had merged into the dun ground, but now they turned into numerous mirrors, as though the earth had opened many eyes. From up so high, Wang couldn't see the details of rehydration, but he could see more and more people gathered on the shores of the lakes, like swarms of ants coming out of their nests in spring. The world had once again been revived.
Do you not want to join this wonderful life?
Motza asked, pointing to the ground below.
When women are first revived, they crave love. There is no reason for you to stay here any longer. The game is over. I am the winner. As a piece of machinery, your model universe is indeed incomparable. But as for its predictions, may I use your telescope to observe something?
Please. Motza gestured at the large telescope. Wang walked up to the instrument and paused.
How can I use it to observe the sun?
Motza retrieved a black, circular piece of glass.
Use this smoked glass filter.
He inserted it in front of the eyepiece. Wang aimed the telescope at the sun, now halfway up the sky. He was impressed by Motza's imagination. The sun did indeed look like a hole through which a sea of fire could be seen, a small view into a much larger hole. But as he examined the image in the telescope more closely, he realized that the sun was different from the sun he was used to in real life. The sun here had a small core. He imagined the sun as an eye. The core was like the eye's pupil, and though it was small, it was bright and dense. The layers surrounding it, by contrast, appeared insubstantial, wispy, gaseous. The fact that he could see through the outside layers to the core indicated that those layers were transparent or translucent, and the light from those layers was likely just scattered light from the core. The details in the image of the sun stunned Wang. He was once again assured that the game designers had hidden a vast amount of data within the superficially simple images, just waiting to be revealed by players. As Wang pondered the meaning of the sun's structure, he became excited. Because time in the game was now passing quickly, the sun was already in the west. Wang stood, adjusted the telescope to aim at the sun again, and tracked it until it dipped below the horizon. Night fell, and the bonfires across the plains mirrored the sky full of stars. Wang took off the smoked glass filter and continued to scan the skies. He was most interested in the flying stars, and shortly found two. He only had time to observe one of them briefly before it was dawn again, so he inserted the filter and continued to observe the sun. In this manner, Wang performed astronomical observations for more than 10 days, enjoying the thrill of discovery. Indeed, the fact that time within the game had been sped up helped with the observations, as the motion of celestial bodies became more apparent. On the 17th day of the stable era, 5 hours after the predicted time for sunrise, the world was still under cover of dark night. Multitudes thronged at the foot of the pyramid, their innumerable torches flickering in the chill wind.
The sun will probably not rise again. It is like at the end of civilization number 137.
Wang said to Motza. Motza stroked his beard and smiled confidently.
Do not fret. The sun will rise soon, and the stable era will continue. I've already learned the secret of the motion of the universal machine. My predictions cannot be wrong.
As though confirming Motza's words, the sky over the horizon brightened with the dawn's first light. The crowd around the pyramid shouted in joy. The silvery light brightened far more rapidly than usual, as though the rising sun wanted to make up for lost time. Soon, the light covered half the sky, even though the sun was still below the horizon. The world was already as bright as midday. Wang looked toward the horizon and saw it giving off a blinding glare. The glowing horizon arched upward and became a curve that spread from one edge of his visual field to the other. He soon realized that he wasn't seeing the horizon, but the edge of the rising sun, an incomparably immense sun. After his eyes adjusted to the bright light, the horizon reappeared in its old place. Wang saw columns of black smoke rising in the distance, especially clear against the glowing background of the solar disk. A fast horse rushed toward the pyramid from the direction of the rising sun, the dust from its hooves forming a distinct line across the plains. The crowd parted before the horse, and Wang heard the rider scream at the top of his lungs, "Dehydrate! Dehydrate!" Following the rider was a herd of cattle, horses, and other animals. Their bodies were on fire, and they moved across the ground like a burning carpet. Half of the gigantic sun's disk was now above the horizon, taking up much of the sky. The earth seemed to slowly sink down against a brilliant wall. Wang could clearly make out the fine structures on the surface of the sun, eddies and surging waves filling the sea of flames, sunspots floating along random paths like ghosts, the corona lazily spreading out like golden sleeves. On the ground, both those who had already dehydrated and those who hadn't began to burn like countless logs thrown into the belly of a furnace. The flames that consumed them were even brighter than glowing charcoal in a furnace, but were quickly extinguished. The giant sun continued to rise, and soon filled most of the sky. Wang looked up and felt his perspective shift. Suddenly, he was no longer looking up, but down. The surface of the giant sun became a fiery earth, and he felt himself falling toward this brilliant hell. Lakes and ponds began to evaporate, and puffs of white steam rose up like mushroom clouds. They rose, spilled open, and dispersed, covering the ashes of the dead.
The Sable Arrow will continue. The universe is a machine. I created this machine. The Sable Arrow will continue. The universe...
Wang turned his head. The voice belonged to Matza, who was already on fire. His body was encased within a column of tall orange flame, and his skin crinkled and turned into charcoal. But his two eyes still shone with a light that was distinct from the fire consuming him. His two hands, already burning pieces of charcoal, held up the cloud of swirling ashes that had once been his calendar. Wang was burning up as well. He lifted his two hands and saw two torches. The sun briskly moved to the west, revealing the sky behind it. It soon fell below the horizon, and the ground seemed to rise against the brilliant wall this time. A dazzling sunset swiftly turned to night, as though a pair of giant hands had pulled a black cloth over a world that had turned to ash. The earth glowed with a dim red light, like a piece of charcoal just retrieved from a furnace. For a brief moment, Wang saw the stars, but soon steam and smoke hid the sky and covered everything on the red glowing earth. The world sank into a dark chaos. A red line of text appeared. Civilization number 141 fell into ruin in flames. This civilization had advanced to the Eastern Han period. The seed of civilization remains. It will germinate and again progress through the unpredictable world of 3body. We invite you to log on in the future. Wang took off the V-suit. After his mind had calmed down a bit, he again had the thought that 3body was deliberately pretending to be merely illusory, while in fact possessing some deep reality. The real world in front of him, on the other hand, had begun to seem like the superficially complex, but in truth rather simple, along the river during the Qingming festival. The next day, Wang went to the Nanotechnology Research Center. Other than some minor confusion due to his absence the day before, everything was normal. He found work to be an effective tranquilizer. As long as he was absorbed by it, he was no longer bothered by his nightmarish worries. He deliberately kept himself constantly busy the whole day and left the lab only after it was dark. As soon as Wong left the research center building, the nightmare-like feeling caught up to him. He felt like the starry sky was a magnifying glass that covered the world, and he was a tiny insect below the lens with nowhere to hide. He had to find something to occupy himself. Then he thought of Young Dong's mother, Ye Winxie, and drove to her home. Ye was alone at home. When Wong entered, she was sitting on the sofa reading. Wong noticed that her eyes were both myopic and presbyopic, and she had to switch glasses both when she read and when she looked at something far away. She was very happy to see Wong and said that he looked much better than the last time he had come to see her. Wong chuckled.
It's all because of your ginseng.
Ye shook her head.
What I gave you wasn't very good. We used to be able to find really high-quality wild ginseng around the base. I once found one about this long. I wonder what it's like there now. I heard that it's deserted. Well, I guess I'm really getting old. These days, I'm always thinking about the past. I heard that you suffered a lot during the Cultural Revolution. You heard it from Ruishan, didn't you?
Ye waved her hand, as though trying to wave away a strand of spider silk.
In the past, it's all in the past. Last night, Ruishan called me. He was in such a hurry that I had a hard time understanding him. All I got was that something seemed to have happened to you. Xiao Wang, let me tell you, by the time you're my age, you'll realize that everything you once thought mattered so much turns out to mean very little.
Thank you, Wang said. He once again felt the warmth that he had missed. In his current state, his mental stability depended on two pillars: this old woman, who had weathered so many storms and become as gentle as water, and Shi Qiang, the man who feared nothing because he knew nothing. Ye continued.
As far as the Cultural Revolution is concerned, I was pretty lucky. Just when I thought I had nowhere to go, I found a place where I could survive. You mean Red Coast Base?
Ye nodded.
That was truly an incredible project. I used to think it was just made-up rumors. Not rumors. If you want, I can tell you some of what I experienced.
The offer made Wong a little worried.
Professor, I'm only curious. You don't need to tell me if it's not appropriate. It's no big deal. Let's just imagine that I'm looking for someone to hear me talk. You could go visit the senior center. You wouldn't be lonely if you went there occasionally. Many of those retirees were my colleagues back at the university, but somehow I just can't mix with them. Everyone likes to reminisce, but no one wants to listen, and everyone feels annoyed when someone else tells a story. You're the only one who's interested in Red Coast. But for you to tell me about those things, isn't that prohibited? That's true. It's still classified, but after that book was published, many others who were there also began to tell their stories, so they're like open secrets. The person who wrote that book was very irresponsible. Even if we put aside his agenda, the content of that book was often inaccurate. I should at least correct those errors.
Then, Ye Winxie began to tell Wong about what happened to her during her years at Red Coast.